Today we are going to present a compilation of some videos that were filmed by Gregor Mendel.
I'm Gregor Mendel, better known as Gregor Mendel. Well, they say that I'm the father of genetics because of the great advances in genetics that I did at my time, the 19th century, where there were only genetics based on mixed heritage, which was a very poor explanation of the hereditary phenomena. I was born on July 20, 1822, in the Czech Republic, in a farm. This territory used to belong to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. My parents were Rosin Mendel and Anton Mendel. I was able to acquire great agricultural skills because I come from a rural origin. As an adult, I became a Brahmin monk. And there are research centers near my monastery. Fortunately, my monastery sponsored my studies in one of the academies that were near my monastery, which was the University of Vienna. I studied math and botany. After I finished, I returned to my monastery and started to study pea plants. I studied the inheritance of 7 of their characteristics. The experiment lasted 8 years. From them, I wrote 3 principles of genetics. So this experiment was extremely important for me and my career. It also made me do history in the area of genetics. I died in January 6, 1884. Due to a chronic nephritis and kidney failure.
Hello, my name is Carlos Garza, but everyone knows me as Gregor Mendel. Today I will talk to you about how I conduct my key experiment using the garden pea. Pisum sapientium, that is the scientific name, as a model system. First of all, I discovered that the pea plants make a convenient system for study of genetics. Some of the useful characteristics of pea plants that I observed are that they include a rapid life cycle and a large production of seeds. Pea plants are also often self-fertilizing, which means that the same plant produces both the egg and the sperm that come together at fertilization. Therefore, I took advantage of this property to produce authentic breeding pea lines. That is, it fertilizate and select the peas of many generations, until I got lines that consistently produce offspring identical to the parent. Also, pea plants are easy to cross in a controlled way with a great method that I came out with. This is done by transferring pollen from the anthers, that is the male part of a pea plant, to the carpel, that is the female part of a mature pea plant of a different variety. To carry out the process, first, a flower has to be immaculate from the female part, which means that the male parts are preferably removed with tweezers or scissors. The pollen is then collected from a flower on the male mother plant with a brush. There, the pollen is applied with touches on the female part of the male mother flower. And finally, when I establish the lines of authentic breeding peas with different traits for one or more characteristics of different, such as the tall or short height, I began to investigate how the characteristics were inherited by performing a series of crosses.
Thanks to the experiments that I performed, I made 3 important laws based on them, so I must explain them to you now. First, we have the law of a hybrid's uniformity or dominance principle. All members of the F1 field generation are hybrids or heterozygotes in uniforms, as they have the same phenotype given by the dominant allele inherited from one of its parents. This is the principle of dominance. Then we have the law of character segregation. This law begins just with the F1 field generation. Recall that all organisms of this generation are heterozygotes or hybrids. This law states that for any trait, each pair of alleles of a gene splits and one gene passes from each parent to an offspring. And also, this law of mine showed that the idea of mixed heritage was completely wrong. Contrary to this, I'm going to explain something to you. Each allele is segregated or separated from four new allele combinations that expresses individual phenotypes for each member of the F2 generation. For my final law, we have the law of independent assortment. This law of mine establishes that alleles in chromosomes of organisms are segregated independently of other alleles. The alleles that give rise to their characteristics do not depend on each other.
As I've been thinking and analyzing my experiment, I've reached some conclusions as a result of cross-fertilizing pea plants that had clearly opposite characteristics. Tall with short, smooth with ring, those containing green seeds with those containing yellow seeds, etc. And after analyzing the results of my experiment, I've reached two important conclusions. I formulated a law called the law of segregation, which establishes that there are dominant and recessive traits passed randomly from parents to offspring. And I've provided an alternative to blending inheritance, the dominant theory of time, I've called it, and the law of independent assortment, which establishes that traits are passed on independently from other traits of parents to offsprings.
Hello, my name is Mariana Mesta, and I'm going to be narrating Mendel's Society Influences Impact as if I was him. Well, it is me again, Gregor Mendel. And as you may already know, I was an Austrian monk who made great contributions to the world of genetics. But something that you may not know is that at that time, in the mid-1800s, that was when I performed all of my researches and experiments, well, people believed in mixed heritage, which was a very poor explanation for some of this phenomenon. This idea was certainly inconvenient and wrong. But since very few people at that time had my ability for agricultural crops, mixed with the mathematical knowledge I had acquired, I was able to prove many other different theories that back up what I believed. All of this was very innovative at this moment, because while other researchers studied all characteristic features of organisms, I decided that isolating them will be the best choice in order to study them properly. But not everything was easy. When I was a young man, my family did not have the resources to pay for my education. I suffered depression and other illnesses due to how society saw me at that moment. But I overcame this, finished, and graduated from college. Also, another thing is that society did not saw research as something important. For example, my father preferred me to stay and work in the crops than for me to go to a monastery and study all the time. He thought it was a complete waste. But I followed my passions for knowing what was correct, all through researches and experiments. And that is how I joined the monastery against the thoughts of the culture at that time. Now, I know all of my struggle had been worth it. I'm considered the father of genetics, and I prove that science, no matter at what time, can help us discover a whole new number of horizons. See you next time.
Punnett square explaining laws. First, we need to define what is a Punnett square, which, by the way, I didn't create. The genetic responsible for that was Reginald Punnett. But well, the Punnett square is a grid that works in order to predict the genotype and phenotypes of the offspring of a particular genetic cross. This makes easier to calculate the probability of genotypes and phenotypes. Now, in order to have a correct Punnett square, you need to first draw a table as big as you need to solve the problem. Then, give a letter to every allele, uppercase for dominant, lowercase for recessive. After that, you need to place the gamete of one parent on top and the other one on left. When you finish that, combine the sperm and the ovule genotypes within the squares. And as a final step, you need to convert the number of descendants of each genotype into a fraction. And that's all you have to do.
This is the end of the presentation. We hope that you learn more about the life of Gregor Mendel, and thanks for your attention.